Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Daemon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Jonathon Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Happy New Year, Daemon.
Happy New Year as well. And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Remember, Daemon, when we started this show and it was Next Gen Console Watch 2020? Now it's 2022 and we're still doing it. Still here.
These consoles are not going to watch themselves, Ryan. Today, we're joined by Bo Moore. He's IGN's executive editor of tech. Bo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Damon. Glad to be here.
So CES is going on right now in Las Vegas in some form, some sort of abbreviated form because of the ongoing pandemic. But we did get some next-gen related news coming out of there, especially for PlayStation fans. PSVR 2. Jonathon, this is something that we already knew it was coming, but this is at least an official confirmation that that's what it's going to be called, right?
Yeah, finally, after months of wondering what the name could be, much like at CES in 2020 when PlayStation announced it was the PS5, it's of course the PSVR 2. So no shock there, but excited to kind of get a few more specifics about it, get some details. We obviously got a look at the controllers last year, but now we're getting an actual sense of what the specs of this thing are going to be.
And looking at the specs, Bo, how does it look like PSVR 2 is going to compare to Oculus Quest 2 or the Valve Index?
Yeah, the specs are actually pretty high end. This is one of the highest resolution headsets. Pretty much only the HTC Vive Pro 2 has a higher resolution per eye. So it's beating the Quest 2. It's basically double the resolution of the original PSVR. And even, the Valve Index, which is one of the best PC-based headsets you can get, is a lower resolution than this. So pretty high-end specs. We'll see how it ends up being priced.
Yeah, speaking of the price was not revealed, nor was the release date, or even what the headset looks like. But Jonathon, as our PlayStation representative here, do these details that we got this week, are they exciting to you?
Yeah, it definitely is exciting in the sense that I think it shows that PlayStation isn't just putting out a PSVR 2 because they feel like they have to, or that it's sort of a perfunctory need to keep their VR focus going. It does feel like they are trying to actually make a pretty competitive VR headset, both on that, graphical and visual fidelity side, as well as sort of some of the advancements that it's doing on the capabilities and the immersion side of it. Obviously, PlayStation made a really big deal about the PS5's DualSense controller, and the Sense controllers for the PSVR 2 are going to have haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. There's also going to be sort of a more advanced haptic feedback in the headset itself that is meant to help simulate things in there. So it's exciting to see them doing things that will seem to push their intention with VR forward.
Well, now, Ryan, obviously VR is an area that Xbox isn't trying to compete in at the moment. But you were saying before we were taping that you're actually excited for PSVR 2.
I really am. I love the technology of VR. The PSVR 1, I fell off of it pretty quickly. Like, I really liked some of the earlier titles that they had. Like the Batman Arkham VR was clearly just a small scale project, but I just loved that it kind of really did put you in the boots of in the cape and cowl of Batman. So I'd love to see more stuff like that. And the thing that Sony did really well was they got a lot of developers to make PSVR games, whereas the other PC headsets, there are plenty of great games out there, but there's, it's just more of a loosely regulated. There's just not as much sort of all in one direction momentum the way that a platform holder like Sony can direct with PSVR. And the specs on this, as Bo alluded to a minute ago, are so impressive that I feel like the PSVR 2, whether it comes out this year or next year, and I figure we'll discuss that at some point, it seems like it's going to stay competitive and stay pretty technologically up to par for quite a while. I want to see great VR games. I mean, Half-Life Alyx is far and away, I don't even think anybody would really argue. It is the gold standard of like what's possible with VR. And so if Sony's going to stay in the game here with VR, and hopefully get more quality developers. I mean, we had a Horizon game get announced for PSVR 2. So if PSVR 2 will help lead to more just top shelf VR experiences hopefully of the Alyx kind of caliber, then I'm all for it. I can't wait.
Yeah, speaking of that Horizon game, the first game, revealed for PSVR 2, we've got Horizon Forbidden West coming out less than 2 months now. Jonathan, this was kind of a surprise to me. Was it to you?
Not so much. There have been some rumors out there and some things that I'd heard considering that there might be a Horizon game. And I think when you see that it's co-developed by Guerrilla and Firesprite, the pieces sort of fall together, and it makes a lot of sense that that's one of their first projects out the gate as a PlayStation first-party studio. They previously made the Persistence VR, which also had a non-VR version as well. So when you put sort of that expertise together with obviously Guerrilla's love and the PlayStation audience's love for Horizon, it feels like a really good marriage and sort of first introduction for what PSVR 2 can do. And I think it shows that PlayStation really wants PSVR 2 to have its biggest franchises as a part of it. I don't think that necessarily means, Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok are going to be fully playable in VR or anything like that. But we didn't get a ton of those PlayStation first-party experiences from PSVR 1, say for things like Astrobot. So it's exciting to see that this is the first thing that they announced for PSVR 2 is such a big franchise.
We know we won't be playing as Aloy, but Aloy will be appearing in the game. Do we know anything else about what the gameplay is going to be like?
Not too much. They said to sort of expect more information as we, get closer to it, but that it will feature a new protagonist, and they're going to reveal information about who that protagonist is. At some point, we'll see new and other returning characters, not just Aloy, I believe. But, the chance to, as you see in the teaser trailer, get to see a tall neck from that perspective and the actual size of that thing. I mean, that's just going to be such a cool opportunity. Obviously, Guerrilla created such a creative, beautiful world with Horizon, and then their expertise of that world with Firesprite's expertise of VR, I think could lead to a pretty awesome experience, whatever it ends up actually being.
Okay, so Bo, looking at PSVR 2 from an agnostic, just a tech perspective, are these specs impressive to you?
Yeah, like I was saying before, the resolution is there at the top end. It's also got it uses an inside-out tracking system. So that's similar to what we've seen on the Oculus Quest 2, where you don't need cameras or base stations positioned around your room. It's a lot easier to just get into VR when the cameras are on the headset, as opposed to having to. You still need some space to set up and play, especially if you're doing room scale VR, but you don't necessarily have to position your cameras around the room, and that makes it a lot easier to get in the game. It also has eye tracking, which is something that isn't super common yet on VR headsets. I think I mentioned the Vive Pro 2. I believe it has it as well, but we haven't really seen eye tracking as an implementation in many VR games yet. And so the idea there is further lead to that level of immersion that VR is going for.
Jonathan, do we think of the original PSVR as a success?
I think for what it was probably attempting, yes. That's obviously up to PlayStation to decide ultimately, but it seems if they're going for VR 2, they probably thought it was. It hit its 5-year anniversary, last year, and we had heard roughly that it had sold at least, over 5 million headsets a little earlier than that. And so when you take a look at it, that's a very small portion of the overall 112 plus million PS4 users. But for an add-on that originally started costing as much as the system itself, the PSVR launched at $400 as its price point. I think that's a pretty high metric. And I do also believe, I forget the exact numbers, but I think PSVR owners tended to buy a lot of VR games. And so there was obviously a pretty high attach rate, I think, for games for people who got it. So, I think it had a very interesting life cycle where it would have really great moments and then kind of a downtime for months, if not a year at a time. To Ryan's earlier point, the launch was really exciting, and then maybe about a year went by and it was pretty quiet. And then in 2018, you got Astrobot and Tetris Effect and Firewall Zero Hour and a few other things. And then it got a little quieter for a little longer. And then you got things like Iron Man and whatnot. So it had this sort of up and down life cycle where I'm assuming the intent for PSVR 2 is to keep it a bit more steady.
So what do you think it would take? I want to hear from all of you, Jonathan, but let's begin with you. What will it take for PSVR 2 to sell more than 5 million units?
I think honestly getting it out earlier than later and making sure that those droughts don't happen. I think that was a thing that we talked about on Beyond every time. There were incredible PSVR games coming out all the time, but not always ones that were as attention grabbing. So I think it's going to come down to, one, getting that headset out a little bit earlier in the life cycle, and we can, talk about release date in a bit. But I think, two, also making sure that it is competitively priced. And so I think it will really depend on how much PlayStation wants this thing to sell for the overall base. If their goals are to sell about the same as the PSVR in terms of the total base, they'll probably keep their expectations a little lower. But if they want this to be bigger, I think they have to be a bit more aggressive with pricing with the release of these big sort of marquee Horizon-like games for PSVR 2.
If PSVR 2 is out this fall, that'll already be the third calendar year of the PS5's life. But Ryan, I think you had some doubts of your own that given the ongoing chip shortage, that PlayStation could even get this thing out this year.
Yeah, I mean, I hope Jonathan's right. I want him to be correct, but yeah, I'm just really skeptical. Sony can't even feed PS5 demand even close to what the full amount is due to that situation. So if Sony's able to get it out at Christmas number 2, or like Christmas number 3, but the second anniversary basically of the console, I think that would be great. I do also wonder where the developers are at, because certainly we know that dev kits are out there and they need games to be ready. So can developers get ready for a nice launch lineup this fall, or do they need more time into 2023? Because the pandemic has also affected development times. We've seen so many games delayed because it's really difficult to make these large scale video games with large teams in a distributed fashion. So I'm skeptical that they would make this Christmas, even though, of course, again, they haven't announced a date. I hope Jonathan's right. I hope it is. I'll be trying to get mine on day one regardless, but I'm just sort of mentally preparing myself for it to be 2023.
And Bo, I want to get your perspective. The Oculus Quest 2 has found a lot of success with the right price point and its ease of use. You don't have to be hooked up to a PC to use it. It's standalone. What does Sony need to do with PSVR 2, which does need to be hooked up to a PlayStation 5 to make it competitive with the other VR offerings that are out there, and hopefully, in Sony's mind, to sell more than the original PSVR did?
Yeah, I think that having that connection to the PS5 is really, it's both a hindrance and a boon, because you've got this whole ecosystem of players who are interested in playing PS5 games that are, bought into having a PS5, to getting more out of that console. But like you were saying, the Oculus Quest, on the other hand, it's just so easy to just put on the headset. You don't need any additional hardware, very little setup. It's standalone VR and go. And that has given it a whole lot of success. So for the PSVR to reach those levels, is it going to hit Oculus Quest levels? Probably not, but it will have the success, like Ryan and Jonathan were saying, of just reaching that PlayStation audience and giving them both VR games as well as bringing VR to more of that console audience.
Well, it's exciting in the least. As soon as we learn more about PSVR 2, we'll be sharing it with you and discussing it right here on this very show. Bo, are there any other sort of next-gen gaming related announcements coming out of CES this week?
Yeah, we did have a brand new graphics card that no one will be able to buy. A couple, actually. But at the very top end is the Nvidia GeForce RTX 3090 Ti. It costs, I think, about $2,000 and will be absurdly powerful, but it will, as all gaming hardware is right now, almost impossible to find. There are also some entry-level graphics cards as well. AMD and Nvidia both have one at the $200, $250 price point, which is really promising. It's nice to see some new budget-minded graphics cards. Again, who knows if you'll be able to find them at MSRP? Most likely not. Good luck.
Any release dates for those cards?
We're looking at soonish. I don't think that they've announced actual release dates, but generally when graphics cards gets announced, they're coming in the next month or two. So yeah, street date, and when people will actually be able to get them again.
Sure.
Who knows?
And I believe Sony announced some new TVs that are sort of built for PlayStation 5. Is that right?
Yeah, CES always has a big crop of, every display manufacturer showing off their TVs for the year. And Sony, we've talked on this show several times. Jonathan has asked me, does Sony TVs, do they have any sort of special integrations with the PS5? And up till now, the answer's been not really. But this year, they kind of are going in that direction. The question is whether these are actual new features or just kind of rebrandings of existing things. So the new line it's the A80K series. I believe last year's was the J. So we are once again one more letter into the alphabet. But they have something called Auto HDR. Basically, they have an Auto HDR mode that automatically but it will help adjust the HDR settings to look better and have you have to do less calibration when you're playing an HDR game on PS5. And then they also have it's called I'm sorry, I can't remember the exact specific name, but it sounds a lot like the auto low latency mode. But what it's supposed to do is the PS5 will talk to the TV and tell it whether you're playing a game or streaming something on, Netflix or whatever through the PS5 and adjust the variable refresh rate and game mode settings accordingly. So very similar to auto low latency mode, and it might just be a bit of branding that they have slapped onto an existing feature, but it might also work a little bit better than some of those other TVs. So it is at least a little bit of an answer to, are they trying to form some type of technology ecosystem between the two?
Jonathan, if I remember correctly, I think you got a new TV fairly recently, but did these new Sony TVs pique your interest at all?
I did, and Damon, I can't just keep buying TVs. It's too much, and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I have 12 in my living room now. No, it's interesting to see, and to Bo's point, I'm waiting to see them actually tested and put out in the market and see how people play with them, because at the end of the day, it could just be some nice marketing to tie everything together, and I'm sure it's a little bit of that, as well as the TV saying that they're auto detecting what your PS5 is doing is very nice, and obviously it's going to prioritize doing that for a PlayStation console. But if it's not pushing things in some dramatic way that I would fundamentally change the way I interact with my PS5, I think I'm probably okay for another couple of years to wait on a new TV for now.
Sure. Ryan, still happy with your LG?
I am. Come to think of it, though, I'm kind of surprised that Sony hasn't made PlayStation branded televisions at this point. They did
once upon a time, right?
Yeah, it's
those
just
3D TVs.
It's a little surprising to me that they have not leveraged that. PlayStation's such a big brand name for them, and they obviously have the whole TV business. But in any case, yeah, I'm good here for a while. I tried to spend a little bit more money on this one. I got the OLED, hoping that it was going to last most, if not this entire console generation at least. So I'm good for now.
I feel the same way. Before we go, I have the results of last episode's poll when we asked, what Unreal Engine 5 game are you most excited for? Because we were discussing the new the Matrix Unreal Engine 5 demo that sort of surprise dropped last month. And at the top of the list, this was surprising to me and not to others. So I guess I need to get on board with Black Myth Wukong with almost 29% of the vote. That was the winning result. That beat out Hellblade 2, Dragon's Quest, 12, Stalker 2, and Redfall. Redfall is way down at the bottom of the list. Ryan, does that have you worried about excitement for Redfall?
Oh, not at all. We don't know anything. We got a cinematic announcement trailer. They haven't shown literally a single frame of gameplay yet. Black Myth Wukong. I think we've put up 2 or 3 trailers, and I think 1 or 2 of them has been exclusive to IGN, and I think they've all done 5 million views or more on our YouTube. Wow. It is a game that it has captured the interest of the IGN audience. So no surprise there for me.
And we have a new poll for you to vote on for next episode. We want to know, are you interested in PSVR 2 and what price would you be willing to pay for it? Make sure to vote at IGN.com and we'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. Thank you to Bo for being our special guest this week. We will return same time next week, Friday morning, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X news. We'll see you then.